Good evening, everybody, and welcome to today's episode of Marvelous Medicine. Like we've been talking nonstop for the past few weeks, we just had our 200th episode, which we did offline on Sunday, and it was a really sort of a very, very pleasurable experience. There were so many people showed up in person, despite it being a Sunday. And we had some youngsters also, so we had a good interaction between the faculty and so Radhakrishna, if you have that video ready, we'll go through it. Otherwise, we go ahead with it.
Yes.
So we just thought for those those of you who missed out, we'll just give you a bit of snippets. Just warning ahead. The photographers seem to have spent a lot of time chasing Radhakrishna and me, so you may see a lot of us, but I mean, just excuse us for that. So we thought before we got busy, we should post. So the organizing committee, that's Ilango Setu, Kumera, who's the physician assistant who helped us, that's Sister Anita, and our medical head in MGM. This is Padma Shri Dr. Nalini, our professor. We had this little board which we asked people to sign, and that's Dr. Kannan Rajendran from MGM CRI, who helped us pull off the Marvelous Medicine on Wheels. This is Dr. Virendra Kumar Nim, who's attended almost every session of Marvelous Medicine. Our batchmates from MBBS turned up. This is Dr. Tilaka, part of the organizing committee, and our youngster, Amrita Varshini. This is Dr. Raghavendran, anesthesiologist, also part of the Marvelous Medicine family. This is my teacher and professor, Dr. Ravi Shankar, and pediatrician, Dr. Ramachandran. Jayapriya, surgeon. Arulmori, obstetrician. Vetturi Prabhakar came all the way from Bangalore, pediatrician. This are our friends, batchmates who turned up, and our teachers who turned up in big numbers to support us. And we had Amrita Varshini singing the Tamil Thai Vaarthu. That's Radhakrishna introducing the program for the day. Dr. Sridhar was there right on time to do the honors for the Kutti Valakku, and our professors from Pondicherry, Dr. Sethraman and Dr. Ravi Shankar. Dr. Nalini suddenly pulled off a thing saying that she wanted to honor us. So it was such a proud moment for Radhakrishna and me that our teacher chose to honor. Then we had the first panel on pedagogy. We had Professor Rela and Professor Biji Potikat. And there was a lot of audience interaction, as you can see. The second panel was on medicine. Then we paid homage to Dr. Kuganandam and Dr. Danda. People also had fun and chit-chat during the tea break, but we managed to get them back into the hall. This was the surgery panel, and then the life skill panel, and then we had Dr. Chandrasekhar Ramurthy do a presentation on Tamil cinema doctors, which was quite a hit. Special thanks to Ilango Setu. Thanks to Dr. Suresh Babu for coming.
No, you can have it if you want.
And we had a youngster, Deeptika, presenting the vote of thanks. And around we were profusely touched by Dr. Piyush Sani, who came all the way from Delhi just to spend a few hours with us. Thank you. Over to you, Ravi Shankar.
Thank you. So you guys have to put up with me today doing the introductions because I sort of put my foot in it. Let me start by saying that, temple visits have always, induced mixed feelings. I'm sure not just in me, but in many other people, because it's a lot of the times it becomes a very unidimensional visit with one single sole purpose, but and everybody, nobody has the time to answer questions that young kids have about the various parts of a temple, etc. Now, this is not unique to the Indian culture or just the Hindu religion. Places of worship like Stonehenge and the Mayan and Incan places of worship have not just been a unidimensional place of worship. They have been vibrant centers of community, society, etc. And temples really are no exception. They not only, although their primary purpose is religious, they also have many other allied roles. The people who made these temples were phenomenally knowledgeable. They not only knew the so-called Vastu Shastra, they knew everything about the geology of the place, they knew material sciences, engineering, and a lot of other math and engineering skills were definitely evident, which we can even appreciate today, in addition to their obviously artistic skills as sculptors, painters, etc. In addition, many of the temples served as centers of education. So they not only taught religious subjects and scriptures, but they also taught things like logic and other allied subjects. So these students had to be housed. So there was housing for them. The priests had to be housed. When you have people there, they fall ill. So many of these temples were associated with hospitals, and they sort of were involved in medicine as such at that time. Temples were also banks where people could sort of deposit their money and maybe even earn interest. So temples played such a fantastic and phenomenal role in society. Music and dance that we consider as performing arts today were actually part of the 16 different offerings to a temple, the so-called Shodasha Upachara. So again, all of this was, grew and was nourished and flourished, in the heyday of these temples. And to reduce them to a single unidimensional religious, entity seems to be doing them disservice. So in one of the first episodes of Marvelous Medicine, to sort of correct this, we have with us Dr. Shivaram Bharadwaj, who is a renowned plastic surgeon from Chennai, who will be talking to us about one aspect of this myriad of the myriad facets of temples, i.e. temple architecture, how to start looking at them. Dr. Bharadwaj, as I said, is a plastic surgeon who graduated, who completed his MBBS from Madras Medical College, and after a DIP MB, went to Edinburgh to qualify in plastic surgery. He's been working in Chennai since, and currently is part of the Apollo group of hospitals, as well as the Sundaram Trust. He is uniquely qualified to give this talk today because he is not only a plastic surgeon, but obviously he's also a very good photographer. He participates in a whole bunch of heritage walks. He's very well-read, and he's able to put all of these things together to tell a beautiful story. And as an aside, his wife does beautiful paintings of many of these heritage walk sites as well. So in addition, Dr. Bharadwaj is also a trained Carnatic vocalist who's very interested in music. And as you may or may not get through this particular talk, all of the Indian art forms are intricately connected to temples, architecture, etc., etc. And in fact, that's how I got interested in this whole process. Moderating this session today is another plastic surgeon and a person I was privileged to meet in July. It's Dr. Sridhar, who did his MBBS and MS surgery from Kasturba Medical College and did his plastic surgery specialization from Stanley Medical College in one of the first few batches. And since then, he has had a 44-year career in plastic surgery, and he's pioneered several, techniques and other things like he's one of the pioneers of craniofacial surgery and leprosy reconstruction surgery in India. And like Dr. Shivaram, he's also a multifaceted individual. He's an author. He treks. He's trekked all the way up to Mount Kailash, which is very impressive, and I'm very jealous. He also is a wonderful painter. He makes his own, Pilayar Vigrahams for Vinayak Chaturthi, etc. And so, and he's an extremely kind soul to top it all. Now, with them, I'm the imposter as the second moderator. So I will, at this time, hand it over to Dr. Shivaram.
Thank you so much, Ravi, for the very flattering introduction. Not sure whether I deserve that. So, can I start sharing the screen? Patta?
Yes, please.
Yeah,
Okay.
yes, it's already sharing it. Yeah, perfect.
Yeah, okay.
Well.
Good evening and a very warm welcome to all my friends, seniors, mentors, guides, and well-wishers. It's really a tremendous privilege to be asked to talk on something outside your domain expertise. And the temple architecture and heritage has been lately, the last 10, 15 years, pretty close to my heart. And I hope over the next 45 minutes or so, we will look at some of the things which I have found fascinating. Now, a couple of qualifiers. A lot of these I see, looking at the list of people who are here, a lot of you are actual experts, tremendous experts in what we're going to talk. So I beg your forgiveness if I am sounding a bit too basic. And for a lot of them, a lot of you who are venturing into this in the beginning, I beg your forgiveness too if I seem to go a little bit overboard. Trying to strike a balance between these two, let me just get on straight away into that. Over the course of the next 45 minutes, you're going to be in for a few surprises, hopefully. Right, I'm going to start straight away. So this was inspired, the title was inspired, How to See a Temple, from a session, a workshop I attended several years ago, conducted by the Tamil Heritage Trust, more about which I shall talk later. So I'm going to start with a small exercise here. How many of you in this audience can identify this painting and tell me where it's located? You can just put up your hand. Patta is going to do the count. I'll give you 5 seconds.
Mona Lisa and the Louvre.
Okay, I actually don't want the answers now, so just put up your thing and Patta will have a count. How many of you can recognize this painting and where it is located? We just want to know the count. We really don't want to, it's not a classroom, so we're not going to say, you know, who knows. I just want to know how many people know this. So this painting and where it is housed. So you got this Mona Lisa. Almost all of you identified this, and you got this most iconic face of the Ajanta paintings all over the world, the Padmapani. Now, similar exercise. How many of you can identify the picture on your left structure and this picture on the right, and where they are located? Not more than 5 seconds. And how many of you can exactly name the monument above and the monument below and where they are located?
Kailas, another below.
No, I don't want. For the sake of others, please do not say that.
Sorry.
So just raise your hands so that we know. So the point I'm trying to make is not to find out what. Here we are, a man-made monument, a tower of steel and iron, hardly 150 years old, at the Sydney Opera House, hardly 50 years old. Almost all of us know where they are, what they are, but a lot of us do not know something that's 1,200 years old, around the 8th century. One of the greatest marvels ever built by human beings, so much of a marvel that several people are on YouTube thinking these are done by aliens from space. So you've got this Kailasanatha temple from Kanchipuram above, and the Kailasanatha monolithic temple from Ellora, which is, to my mind, remains one of the greatest marvels. Now, why is it that in a highly developed civilization, how do I reduce this? Yeah, okay, done. A highly developed civilization spread over thousands of years over a vast area, which produced a splendid literature and expressed its lofty ideals in its temples, most of which is still a living traditional and national art, and which is, as Ravi pointed out, which is intimately bound up with the social, economic, and spiritual life of the people that we know far little and less about than events of very recent past and maybe not so great. With that in background, I'm going to go. Sorry. With that background, we are going to see how to see a temple. What does it embody? What does it tell us? And why should we know? We ought to know because this is a continuous and living tradition of more than 2,500 years, and one of the best sources for reconstructing our history. Unless we know where we are, why we are, how we arrived here, we do not know what we are. This has been one of the biggest platforms of the fine and the performing arts and devotional literature, and the canonical prescriptions that are there, the treatises that are there, they embody the greatest unity in diversity, and the adherence to that is just phenomenal. It's an unbroken tradition for more than 1,500 years, and is so comprehensive to include all kind of human endeavors, and it's truly indigenous. It's not just restricted to this particular land. It impacted the entire Southeast region. So what is it? Is it a religious symbol? Is it just a place of worship? Is it an architectural feat? Or is it a monument? Or is it a historical record? Or a civilizational marker? Or is it just an artistic expression of a people who want to burst forth? Or is it just one large community space? Or is it a dynastic record by kings or by megalomaniacs? All of the above, I would argue. In this talk, we're going to concentrate us to talk on temple architecture is like asking somebody to talk on human physiology over 45 minutes. You will know where to start, where to end, and what to cover. So it's going to be a bit of a bird's eye view. The purpose in my talk is to invoke some awe, maybe inspire some thoughts, certainly provoke questions, and definitely encourage you to research and enthuse you to visit at least a few of these. I am not attempting to give a comprehensive coverage. One of the most important things that we ought to know is that we ought to see temples as living structures and not some kind of a monument to a dead past. While several features like art, architecture, history, mythology, iconography, rituals, and social organizations, each of which merit entire lecture subjects in colleges and PhD thesis, we'll be concentrating only on a few. And when I say art, we're talking about all plastic arts like sculpture, painting, etc., and all performing arts from all the way from poetry, music, dance, drama, and literature, and several others. So there is a surprise. I said it's not just a building, right? It is an image, a conception of divinity. Some of you may know this, but if you look at virtually every single major work on temple, you'd find that the temple is actually a representation of the human body. With the gopuram, the entrance of the temple, if you look at the feet, the head, the core of the temple, the sanctum sanctorum, is actually the head. And lots in between. I don't want to go into each of these in detail now. We will go a little bit later. Don't worry by the names that were mentioned here, but just suffice it to say that it is a manifestation, or it's a kind of a symbolic representation of the body as it is. And that in turn will have a representation somewhere else, which we shall see towards the end of our talk. So whatever we are talking about, unless we know how we got here, it's very difficult to appreciate and enjoy the nuances. So a little a brief about how did it come about here. For that, we need to see the evolution of the temple architecture over the last 2,500 years, starting all the way from the Vedic period, the Indus Valley period, and the pre-Gupta, like the Ashokan period, 300, 400 years BC, the post-Gupta period, which is very, very pronounced in the north, middle, and extensively north of the Vindhyas, all the way down to what is called the Dravida land, encompassing a whole lot of small kingdoms from the Chalukyas in the west and the Eastern Chalukyas, and the Rashtrakutas, the Cholas, Cheras, Pandyas, Pallavas, and so on and so forth. And this is the next thing for you. What we see today is not what it always was. Time plays havoc, and it is obviously will play more havoc with perishable structures like brick, wood, etc. However, fortunately, the temples built of rock over various types have withstood at least the last 2.5 millennia. And this is what lives still to tell the tale. When you hear, for example, the Kabali temple is not always where it was, but then the Sangam period literature talks about it. Our Nayanmars talk about it. We know that it was somewhere, it was in some other form, but now it's in a different form. And there are enough Shastras, the south, west, east, all over, telling us about what is the grammar, what is the prosody, what is the structure, how should it be done, and so on. And there are extensive treatises on these Shastras as well, and expositions, which tell us if we can look. So, historically, while we mentioned about from the Ashoka period, the Mauryan, all the way to the Chalukya, we are going to be looking mainly at the south, the Tamil Nadu. That is the Pallava Pandya, the Chola, what we call the Murkala Chola, and the Pirkala Chola, and the Imperial Cholas, and so on, the early, middle, and later. Same way with the Pandyas, Pirkala Pandya, Murkala Pandya, and so on, and the Vijayanagara additions and the Nayak period embellishments that come later. So what is it? If we leave the brick and the mortar and the wood alone, we start with what is still seen today, that is the cave shrines. In Tamil, it's called Pudavarai Koyilgal. So where somebody is excavated from just a sheer rock all the way deep inside, carving out pillars, icons, niches, deities, and sancta, and all other kind of embellishments that we see here. So the cave temples, if you look at some of the cave temples, they range from all the early, as I said, the early Ashoka period, all the way from Ashoka to Chalukya. And you might have heard about the Bihar Baraba caves and the stupas, Amravati and the Sanchi stupas and the Gupta temples, and some of the temples in Badami, Aihole, and our own. Let us just concentrate on our own. There is our great Pallava king who gave himself some 200 titles, the Mahendra Pallava, in Mandakapattu, which is a village near Viluppuram. He says boldly, Etad anishtakam adhrumam aloham asudham vichitra chittena nirmapita dripena brahmeshwara vishnu lakshitayatanam. He says, I have not used brick, I have not used timber, I have not used metal, I have not used mortar. I want to be immortal. I have done this temple dedicated to the Trimurti, Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva. And he calls himself Vichitra Chitta, the kind of magnificent titles he gives. That is a topic by itself. And the best part of it is actually in what's called, you see on the right side, it's in Grantham. Around the 6th to 8th century, they're all in Grantham. Whatever language they use, it was in Grantham. It is known as Pallava Grantham. And what you see here is actually the Devanagari transcript.
Pallavi.
So the Pallava Grantham is what you see here. So, and then it evolves. It evolves over fantastic pillars in, say, for example, the Varaha cave, beautiful staircases, and the Trimurti cave with beautifully carved sculptures with the elegant poses outside. This is in our own Mamallapuram, hardly 50 kilometers from here. And then subsequently, there are a whole lot of Pandya contributions. If you go all around the Madurai territory, you can see even in those of you who have gone to Uchipallar Koil, if you bother to turn left, when you start climbing, you'll see this wonderful cave temple there in the lower cave in the Tiruchirappalli rock. And then we move on to the monoliths. What are monoliths? Imagine one massive piece of rock, and then you carve out something most intricate. How intricate? I've deliberately put on an unfinished rock temple or the monolith temple on the screen above. This is the Pidhari Ratha in Mahabalipuram. You can see that is half finished. Now, what is the difference? In a cave temple, they start doing from below. In a monolith, they start doing from above. They dig a trench all around and they start excavating and sculpting all the way from above until you get this fantastic temples. Now, below, all of you would recognize this, and we all know it is the Pancha Pandava Rathas. Now, it's got nothing to do with Pandavas. It's got nothing to do with Rathas. Ratha as a chariot, they are not chariots, obviously. They are temples, but because they are five, we are very fond of calling a lot of fives as Pandavas, this, Pandavas that. One of the finest examples of monolithic art in South is this. Each is different. You have the Dravida style of Dharmaraj Ratha. I am not going to expound into what is Dravida style, what is Nagara style, what is Vesara style. Maybe that's part of a different lecture altogether. But you can see that there is a structure to this temple all the way from below, all the way from to the top, with several tiers above. And then there is this one with a wagon-shaped Bhimaratha, half finished, and you can see the pillars changing. Sorry, you can see the pillars changing. And then this, what is called the Sahadevaratha, with the apsidal form of roof. And then yet again, another type of Dravida kind of, when I say Dravida, we are talking mainly of the roof. That's the Shikara on top of that. We'll come to all that in a minute. With beautifully carved, elegantly carved deities as well as kings on the floor below. This is the Dravida style Arjuna Ratha, and then the heart-shaped Draupadi Ratha. One look at the outside and you know that this is the temple which houses a goddess. Dwarapalikas are female here. Dwarapalikas are female here. Now, so all the way from cave to monolith to one of my favorites in what is almost a throwback to what I mentioned earlier, the Kailasanada. You have this Vettuvan Koil in Kalugumalai, and look at this. This is strewn out of a single piece of rock with nothing more than chisel and hammer in the 8th century. And you can see this beautifully carved bulls, and in between this, what we call the corniche and the kutas and the nasis, which are basically various terms for describing each of these structures. We will not go into each of these terms for fear of putting you off. Then the scene radically shifts. So far, we are now looking at temples which are built where the rock is found. Cave is found, cave temple. Rock is found, monolith. Now suddenly we get into structural temples. You can take a rock from somewhere, take it all the way to somewhere else and start building. And then you have on a scale and magnitude and the complexity and the intricacy and the sheer breathtaking, it suddenly expands. The whole vista changes. You have this Kailasanada temple in Kanchi, which is all a treatise by itself. If you've not visited the Kailasanada temple in Kanchi, you are missing something greatly in your life, as is the Kailasanada in Ellora. So from the early Chola, in the beginning of my talk, I showed one of the earliest structural temple in Enati near Pudukottai. And they start evolving from something simple to something more. What is simple? I'll come to it in a minute. So around the 9th and 10th century, the Cholas built on it. They reached the zenith by around the 10th to 11th century. And all these are Kodumbalu, Natramale, they're all near Pudukottai, which see a wide variety of beautiful temples. And it reaches its zenith in the middle Chola period around the 11th century, like the Gangaikonda Cholapuram in Brihadishwara temple, or the Rajarajesh built Brihadishwara in Tanjavur, or the Airavateshwara temple in Dharasur. Each one of which is something that you might need to spend days together to appreciate. Subsequently, we go on early. As it comes later, the 13th, 14th centuries, you have more and more embellishments, gopuras being built, mandapas being added, other accessory structures. Now, we will talk about gopuras and vimanas and mandapas a little bit later, where you can see all these the Vijayanagara additions, which are mainly gopurams and pillars. You can see this fabulous prakara, which are beautifully lined pillars. And pillars become more complex with time. Like the Meenakshi temple, the Nayakar Mahal, where the 1,000-pillar temple, actually there are only 999 last time I went and counted. And the third prakaram in Rameshwaram, which is one of the longest here, and sheer symmetry and beauty and awe-inspiring vista, there's nothing to beat this. So that is a brief overview of the history. Now, we come to the crux of the matter. we are looking at the temple. Now, here's a bird's eye view of the temple. That is the layout of the entire thing that you see in front of you. So, when we go to the temple, please give me a minute. What does one see? What does one look at? We all go to temple to pray. Yes, sure. But is it the only thing we do? Do we go do some archana, abhishekam and come back and collect the prasad and come back? No. So what are the elements that make up a temple? What should we actually see, really, as Indians? So we'll see millions of things, but let me concentrate on some of the most important things that I can fit in within this short space of time. You need to know the layout. There is a geography. We saw the history. We need to see the geography. What is the layout like? We need to see what is the Garbhagriha, which is the sanctum sanctorum, the Vimana, the Gopuram, and a few others. I'll come to each of this. Also remember that at various points in history, there have been additions, embellishments, alterations, modifications, and destruction too. So looking at the layout, in any temple, we saw briefly that the temple represents the human body. For the Gopuram, if you take the Gopuram as a feet and the Garbhagriha as the head, the Garbhagriha opens out to a small little vestibule, which opens out to a big mandapam or a hall, which continues on to your Dvajastamba or the flagstaff, and maybe Balipida in some places, and then the Prakara all around. This we saw earlier. You can see the representation briefly here. Don't get too put out by that. So, while the canons describe 16 types of temple layouts, the most common are the square and the rectangular ones. So, a typical Shaivite shrine, for example, we enter through this Gopuram, and then there is what's called a mandap. There are various types of mandapams, Adda Mandapam, Mukha Mandapam, etc., etc. So, or Maha Mandapam, where Ranga Mandapam, where the performance take place, where all kind of things take place. So, through these we slowly enter towards and then there are specific prescriptions and instructions and treatises which tell you what should be where. For example, in a Shaivite shrine, almost always you're going to have the Dakshinamurti on the south side and the Durga on the north side. Almost always you're going to find this. So, and then you're going to have an Amman shrine. And then in a Vaishnavite shrine, it could be slightly different in terms of the placement of the deities, in terms of how the prakaras are made out and where the shrines. But remember, a lot of shrines, whether there is a Pilayar shrine or the Kartikeya shrine or the Taya shrine or whatever, can be, or the Amman shrine even, can be added on later by later kings and later vassals and later merchants and so on. So the layout, that is about the approximate layout. Now, what is a Garbhagriha? This is the most important part of a temple. You see a circle here. That Garbha obviously is a womb. So the house, the room that houses the womb is a Garbhagriha. It doesn't have any opening except the one that allows you to go into it with one single entrance, which faces usually east or west. Apart from the ceremonial lamps that are lit, it's usually dark, and it houses the presiding deity. So when you go to the Kabalishwara Koil, you know that the main deity is a Kabalishwara. When you go to the Parthasarathi Koil, you know that the main deity is a Vaishnavite deity. You go to the Murugan and so on and so forth. Now, here is the next surprise for you. There need not be only one sanctum. If you go to the Hoysala group of temples, Belur, Halabed, Somnathapura, Nogehalli, Dodagidalli, all kind of these, you can have several sanctums. You can have Dvikuta, Trikuta, Panchakuta, Navakuta. Basically, what it means is there are several sanctums. All of them will be opening onto the common mandapa. So the sanctum sanctorum need not be single at all. So this Trikuta Somnathapura, for example, you have Venugopala, you have Janardana, you have the Keshava, Chennai Keshava, which is a later addition, all of them facing towards the central mandapa. So that is about the Garbhagriha. Now we come to my favorite. What is a Vimana? That is your next surprise. Most people confuse between a Vimana and a Gopuram. This is very easy. Gopuram is the one that is at the outside. That is at the entrance of the temple. There could be one in the north, south, east, or west on the parapet wall of any height. These are very, very uniquely Dravidian. They're usually taller than the Vimanas. The Vimana is the one that goes above the deity, the sanctum sanctorum itself. That is called the Vimana. So what does it comprise of? It is not just any kind of a pyramidal or a conical structure. There is a definite grammar which is followed almost across this land with minor variations. You go anywhere, you can talk these terms, and then you'll find that there's a corresponding term in that. And each of these, as I said earlier, is a treatise by itself. For example, now that is the next surprise for you. Do you know that none of these temples have foundations? Today, you want to build a 4-story flat, you need to build a foundation of 20, 30 feet to support your structure. There is nothing. These have withstood 1,500, 2,000 years without any foundation. They are built solidly of rock and stone on foundation called Adhisthana. They might have what is called Upapita, which is the accessory basement. But the Adhisthana is the basement. The pillared hall all the way around what's called the Padavarga. Then the Prastara is your roof. We'll come to each of this. The Griva is the neck of the Vimana itself. You can see it's like a narrowing neck of the Vimana, and the head or the Shikara. The top is the head. It can vary in terms of its shape, size, and constituents. And then finally, you have one metal or a rock-hewn structure called the stupi. So that is your next surprise for you. That is also seen as a representation of the body of a deity. You can see the enormous kind of a comparison between the Vimana structure and the seated deity here. Give you a minute to absorb this. Don't worry about the individual details, but this is the symbolic representation that you see. Now, I threw a lot of names in Sanskrit. There are equivalent names are there in every language. Basically, the Adhisthana is just a base supporting the wall of the Garbhagriha. The Padavarga is the wall itself of the Garbhagriha. The Prastara is the pillar, the structure between the pillars and the roof. That is also known as the entablature. And then we talked about the Griva, which is the neck of the Vimana, and the main tower of the Vimana, which is Shikara, and then the Stupi. Now, that can range from something very, very simple like this to something extremely complex and intricately carved like this. And this is one of the Hoysala ones. This is one of our early simple temples. Even in the simple ones, there are all kinds of additional structures that go in called the Kumudi, the Kumuda, the Jagati, and Kapota, and embellishments which vary, all kind of Yali Varisai, Yana Varisai, Kudra Varisai, all these things which add on and embellishing the basement or the Adhisthana itself. As you see here, for example, in the Somanathpura temple again, one of my favorites. Once you cross the platform, you have every single frieze. This is called the frieze. Every single band depicting either a scroll or the infantry or even, as we shall see later, some nice stories. And when you go to the top, once again, it need not be just one single story. It could be 1, it could be 2, it could be 3, it could be 7. Each of them will have with replicating structures. Some of them you might even be able to go on top and go around it. The Dharmaraja Ratha, for example, in Mahabalipuram, most of you don't know. Nowadays, they don't allow. You can actually go up to the first floor and go all the way around, and you can see beautiful sculptures all the way in the second tier. Today, you're not allowed to go there. If you know somebody, you can. So a lot of these temples will have multi-tiers, Vimana, and you can actually see the sculptures within them. So a couple of other names that I wanted to tell you before we get on to this, the remaining. The Mandapa. I mentioned the Mandapa from the Gopura that you're entering the Mandapa. The Mandapa can be a very simple covered one or just an uncovered one with support by pillars or enormously carved hundreds of pillars that we saw earlier, for example, in the Madurai Mahal. So you can, they could have beautiful pillars. They could have what's called the Sopana Marga. Even the staircase were not simple. Beautifully carved staircases. They're called Sopana Marga. They can be embellished by structures, horses, elephants, jali on either side. The one other term that I wanted to introduce now is what's called a koshta. So we have seen when we enter the temple, we have seen the basement, we've seen the wall surrounding it, we have seen the Vimana roof and the neck and the Shikara and the stupi. But right in front of our eyes, we have this wall, but in between walls, there are niches. These niches are called koshtas. These koshtas sometimes are empty, but quite a lot of times they are filled with beautiful deities. They can be very, very simple deity like this, or they could be highly intricately carved deities like this. How intricate? Look, going around it, when you look at it, see, there's something that called what the mind doesn't know, the eye will not see. There is this Vinadhara Dakshinamurti that you see. When you go around on the side, you see on this nail being seen beautifully with the resting arm on the one side. That is the level of intricacy that you see in some of these. And what is more, they didn't leave an inch spare. It is not like there was a wall and they had to do this and left it like that. Even these walls, they made in and out, in and out, in and out like a fan, so that they can have more carvage, more sculptures, more embellishments, and so on. And each of these niches are filled with stories and deities and maidens and so on. Finally, we come to what's called the Gopuram. As I said, the Gopuram is the unique feature of Dravidian temples. That's actually the entrance to the temple. That's what strikes us with awe when I go there. And this is an interesting story here. When I started having my first interest in all this, and I was born not more than 500 meters from the Kapalishwara temple. I must have gone there 500,000 times in my life in the first 50 years. Sometime about 8 or 9 years back, I was doing the workshop as a student, and then the guide in the afternoon takes us to this Gopuram and stood us outside the Gopuram at 4 o'clock in the heat and said, we'll talk about this. And I thought, well, that's going to be over in 2 minutes. 1 hour later, we hadn't even covered one facet of the Gopuram. There's so much to see. There is so much to see in all these temples that is unbelievable. You can see, for example, let me just show a few examples. If you take a binocular next time that you go, you can see that each facet will have a theme. Each tier will have a theme. And they'll be very symmetrical. They are all like a fractal. You all see the fractals in nature, the nicely converging lines. For example, did you know that the figure is in Tamil is known as Gopuram Tangi, or the bearer, the guy who's actually supposed to be bearing the weight of the Gopuram? Of course, he's not doing it. So that's a symbolic representation he's bearing. And every tier there's a Gopuram Tangi. There are lovely stories. So a lot of you will recognize Bhikshandavar with enticing the wives of all the sages all around with this thing and completely naked. Or Shiva and Parvati coming and giving the weapons to Arjuna after the tapas. Or this beautiful thing. Can somebody recognize this? Can anybody recognize this? This is known as a Rishabha Kunjara. If you look at it from this side, this is a bull. This is a bull with the head looked up. And from this side, it's an elephant. You can't make out if you do it separately. And the whole temple, the whole imagery on this Gopuram on one side is filled with the story. Each of these has a story. You can look at it in Matsya Purana, Kurma Purana, Shiva Purana, Skanda Purana, whatever Puranas, but they're all stories, yes, of course. But they're all carved in Sudai. They are not stone, they are done in Sudai. And a few others, like for example, the Dwajastamba, flagstaff, which varies. And there are interesting stories. If you go to the Kabbalist temple, there are 2 Dwajastambas. There's an interesting story behind it. We'll come to that later. There are inscriptions. This is a very interesting inscription. If you go to Mahabalipuram, but stop short 5 kilometers before, you get to a place called Salwanku, which is what people know as Tiger Caves. There are some fantastic temples like Adirana Chanda Mandapa, the Vyala Cave Temple, and so on. There is our Pallava, our great Chintakama, who has had this beautiful verses carved on either side. What I'm showing you now is one side, there's a Grantha. On the exact opposite, the same thing carved, inscribed in stone in Devanagari. And Tamil Nadu has one of the largest number of inscriptions, rock-cut inscriptions in the entire country, about 40,000. It required 8 volumes for epigraphers to record it. And there are mini shrines. These are known as Deva Kullikas. They could be small mini shrines, or there could be extensive ones. These are sometimes known as Parivara Alayas, or all around in the Kailasanathar temple in Kanchipuram. You can spend an hour in front of each of them. So beautifully done and so artistic, and it really makes you wonder what went into the minds of these people when they did this. They're all around, there are about 50 plus shrines all around. And then, of course, there are temple tanks, there are pillars and pilasters and ceiling sculptures. One word about pilasters, they could be simple pilasters, they could be complex pilasters, they could be very, not pilasters, simple pillars, could be very complex pillars, like you see in one of the Hoysala temples. This is my wife trying to put her finger behind this structure. A pillar and a pilaster, what's the difference? A pillar is something you can go around, pilaster is something it's attached to a wall, therefore you can't go around. And then there are what are called ceiling sculptures. A lot of you would have seen these salabanjikas, angled, beautiful sculptures in angle, salabanjik maidens, darpana sundari. Some of them are dance poses, some of them are dressing poses, alangaram poses. They didn't leave the ceiling plain. They carved all kind of complex philosophical themes, mythological themes, religious themes, divine themes. There are themes where there are 64 versions of Shiva, 24 versions of Vishnu, including all the Dikpalas and the various kind of deities. And these are known as Bhuvaneshwaris. On the dome, if you look up, you need to actually lie down and look up. These are known as Bhuvaneshwaris. And these are known as Salabanjikas. That is not all. When we look at these temples, they tell us a lot of stories. What kind of stories? Stories from myths, itihasas, puranas, daily life. I mentioned this about, this is forming the backdrop of my talk throughout. If you had noticed, we talked about various friezes, various bands. But around the Vimana, these bands become a bit more complex. I deliberately included this figure. I shot this guy sitting on one of these with the leg dangling so that it can tell you what is the height of each of these. It's not more than 8 inches. In that, you have, for example, entire Ramayana being played, entire Mahabharata being played, or Bhagavatam being played on. There is this beautiful, you can recognize this Putra Kamesh Yagam, Dashratha trying to have a yaga and his queens are sitting, not having a child in spite of having so much. And then finally out of that comes this fantastic genie handing over the payasam to Dasharatha and says, give it. Aidai kanalin nindru am pontattinil thuyanal sudai nigar pindam ondru. Shuti eri pangiyum shivanda kannum in a bootham ondru ezhundhathu. Endiye vaithathu tarai misai marithum avvali thaithathu bootham. Attavanum vendanai uitha nal amudinai uriya maadarkakku attaram arabil nindru alithiyal. Give it to the people who deserve to give you children, he says. And then the children grow up. You can see the twins, Lakshmana and Shatrugna, the Bharata and Rama, and they grow in the cradles. And you can see even within that 8 inches, there are only 3 because one of them, the house is 2. And then they start to learn how to crawl, how to walk, how to jump, how to fight, how to wield a bow. And all this is described in a literature. Look at this, is one of my most favorite ones. This is stone, which is natural. And the sculptor, the Sabatiya, used this stone to show these children climbing. Amirdugai Kudalayada Ani Nadai Paila, Imramada Aravara Dinakaran enavum, Tamaramadudan Valar Chatumare enavum, Kubarargal Nilamagal Kuraiva Aravalar Nar sings Kamban in this extensive evocation of their childhood. And they learn archery, and then they are taken to the god, the Yajna. Sorry. Valmiki says, Ityukva Lakshmanam Chashul Agavam Darshiyandiva Sangraha Samucha Astram Agneam Rugnandana Sbahu Rasi Chikshepasa Vidwa Tapa Tat Bhavi. So there he is killing Subahu as if he wants to show his dexterity to Lakshmana in this 8 inches. This is the thing that we'd miss if we didn't know. And then it goes on and on. You can see the Maricha, you can see Ravana lifting the entire hut because he cannot touch Sita, and it goes on and on and on. And there are stories from Mahabharata, one of the starting stories where Bhima shakes the whole tree, and you can see all these Duryodhanas falling upside down from the trees, and therein starts enmity. And then, of course, Bhagavata. From Bhagavata, you can see Ananta Sayana, you can see the Parkadal, Narayana in his Parkadal, in his languid pose. So not far, this is not just in cave, these are all over the place. In Mahishasura Mardini, one of my most favorite, you can see, for sure, dynamism, nothing will ever replicate this. Nobody is able to defeat Mahishasura, and none of the gods, they all gather all their weapons and give it to the goddess. Durga comes riding a lion, and then she puts him on the back foot. Here is a dynamic kind of thing. It is not a static thing. It's such dynamism. He's on the back foot. He's amazed that he's not able to get this powerful, stand up to this powerful woman. Here is another surprise for you. In which civilization and which sculpture would the sculptor have the guts to put a dead body bang in the middle of the sculpture? Look at this. There is a dead body hanging upside down. That is the head. This woman has just killed him. And he's right in the middle. Such fantastic confidence in the dynamism of the whole thing. But he's not fallen down yet. He's still there. But then he's running. The next 5 kilometers down the road, in another sculpture, in another temple, you can see victorious, and he is now running. His parasol has fallen down. His army is scattered. And once she's conquered, she's all calm and nice. And Durga, Kottravai, and you see this one of the most beautiful depictions of Durga in Pullamangai, near Tanjavur, near Kubukan. You can see the Mahishasura Mardini Durga. So finally, we come to the iconography. An icon is actually a pratima, the image of God. It is conceived intuitively, although there is grammar and behind it is conceived intuitively. You can see it described extensively, whether it's a form of the God, for example, Shiva has 64 forms, whether it's a countenance, how he is looking, standing, whether it's a physiognomy that could be Ardhanarishwara, half woman, half men, body of this, body of that, chimera, facial expressions, fierce, calm, benevolent, and the weapons, various weapons, and the posture, and the ornaments. Each of this tells you story after story after story. Whether they are standing, like you see this fantastic Gaja Samahara Murti. I want to draw your attention to this detailing of the Gaja Samahara Murti. One nail is piercing the hide of the elephant, and you can see the nail through that. Or whether it is seated, like in the Narsimha there, or lying down. Like in the same cave that I showed, the Mahishasura Mardini cave, there is this Narayana lying down and Adisesha supremely calm while facing these Madhu and Kaitapa who had come out to kill him. Posturally, they could be straight, they could be slight flexure, Dvibhanga, there could be very languid poses, as in this Vishabhantika leaning on his bull, or another playful posture. Or it could be dynamic, like in this Kala Samahara Murti, or in this most famous Nataraja. Here, I want to tell you something very, very nice. You know, until the 18th century, Indian art was not very greatly appreciated in the West, and even until the 19th century. The typical Eurocentric civilization and the colonial mindset that people had, they think, oh, what is this? 4 arms, 8 arms, a lot of weapons, horrible looking eyes, several heads. All this is very primitive, very pagan, very tribal, and so on. It took somebody like François Auguste René Rodin, one of the greatest sculptors, he's considered the father of modern sculpture, to have one look at this Nataraja, to go into raptures. I just quote this text. I can do nothing better than quote Rodin on the dance of Shiva. He says, today it's a perpetual beauty in the bronze, the imperceptible movement of the light. One senses these motionless muscles and the rays of light, ready to burst the movement should the light shift. Such dynamism was unparalleled, and then suddenly it took off. The Tiruvalangadu bronzes, the Nataraja, the sheer dynamism and the symbolism and the beauty of a form like that, the cosmic dance, with these various manifestations, took everybody by storm. And this is what one should be looking at, whether you're looking at Nataraja or Kala Samara Murti or a Trivikrama or a Lingodbhava. Go to the story behind it, look at it, and then look for the details. So Indian temple is really not a building. It's an image. It's a conception in divinity. The symbolism is there because then hopefully one can make sense of the unseen, of the universal and the eternal. That with our limited physical senses, we may not be able to. So we need to project that. Although there are a lot of canons, the Vastu Shastras, the Shilpa Shastras, the Agama Shastras, which give extensive kind of treatise on how to do it and so on, unless as I said before, unless the mind knows, I will not see. If what we see showed you earlier, it is not poetry in stone. I don't know what is poetry in stone. When we look at these kind of images, the Jnana Shloka that we see, Sasanku Chakram, Sakirita Kundalam, Sapita Vastram, Sarasiru Hekshanam, Sahara Bakshas, Talashobi Kausubam. You see, you can imagine the ornaments, the Kritam, the Makar, the Kundala, and so on. Not just in the slokams, in the kritis of Dikshidhar or Tyagaraja, or in the treatises of in the poetry of Kamba, Ramayana, or in Sangam poetry, or in the beautiful Nine Bards poetry. All these evokes this sense of awe that we know our rightful place in the universe. Finally, we talked about the body, the deity and the body. And what if the body itself were to project onto the cosmos? What if we see from small to the large to the ultimate large, the Vishwarupam, the Vastu Purush Mandala? The early Indians, they saw the whole universe as a mandala, as a space in which you can project and then see parts of us, parts of our existence, and where we belong, how we are here, and so on. It is not just me. Stella Karamrish, one of the greatest art historians who have written so much, I can do no better than to quote her. The Vastu Purusha is a universal being. It represents the manifest form of the cosmic being upon which the temple is built and in whom the temple rests. It is both the body of the cosmic being and a bodily device by which those who have the requisite knowledge attain the best results in temple building. There are major reference works. I have not gone through a lot of them, but a lot of people have helped me in this. In summary, my friends, the next time we visit a temple, try to know something of the history, get the geography as a layout, look at the architectural elements, appreciate the beauty that has gone into it. Look at the iconography of not just the deities, of the whole lot of figurines and sculptures all around the temple. If possible, spend a bit of time thinking about the rituals in the past and what's happening. A lot of them are continuing for thousands of years without a break. Where to go for it? Resources are plenty, if only you have the interest. Like, for example, I did a full-day workshop on what's called the House at How to See a Temple, the Tamil Heritage Trust, or Tamil Parambari Arakattai, which is one of my guiding lights for whatever interest I have, which started by Professor Swaminathan and run by wonderful people like Gopu and Badri and Shivashankar Babu and so on. They offer enormous amount of wisdom and light and resources for us. And this is all now available out in the open for us. So thank you. I leave you. I started with a simple Enati Koil. I leave you with one of the greatest marvel, the Kailasanatha in Ellora, which you can sit down and see all day. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Shivaram. Over to you, Dr. Sridhar.
Well, see, the temple itself is not all. I think your talk itself is awesome. I think it is one of the best talks I have heard in Marvelous Medicine. I think I really appreciate the way you have put it across. I have few things to add on to this. I think we have a lot of wonders of the world. I think these are actually the real wonders of the world and not something which we say that the modern wonders 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I don't think any of these temples are ever mentioned as wonders of the world. I think the UNESCO must take it up and use this temple as the wonders of the world. And about the Purushartha, I think the temples are supposed to be based on the Purusharthas. That is, you have the 4 Purusharthas. Based on that, they say that these temples are also built. Any comments on this, Dharma, Artha, Kama, Moksha?
Definitely, definitely. As seen as a step by step in life. In the Vishnu Sahasranam, it says the Dharmati Prapnyat, Dharma, Arthati, Chartamapnyat. So those who want this will get that. Those who want that will get. But there is a stepwise gradation. You start with something, and then you go to loftier and loftier and loftier till you reach the divinity. That is the ultimate goal.
This Rishabha Kunjara, you see it also in Dharasura
Yes.
as a big, right?
Yeah, of course. Not just that, a lot of places. It's a very popular and favorite theme.
And
You can even see it in a temple in Malaysia.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Iconic icon. I think this iconography. I think we see a lot of this Panchaloka icons in Swami Malai being done. Anybody who is interested can visit that place. I think you can see how the Panchaloka idols are actually being made. Then just to conclude, one thing I say is, when we visit a Shiva temple, we pray before we enter. Right? We want a Sapta Darshana. That is 7 Darshanam you need. Gopure, Sikare, Dware, Prakare, Balipitige, Archaka, Shivabhaktanam, Sapta Darshanam Uchyate. That means I want to see 7 Darshanam, not only God, but we want to see the Gopuram, we want to see the Sikara, then we want to see the entrance as it is. Then you see the Prakara and also the Balipidiga. Apart from that, the 2 things are the Archaka and also any Shiva Bhakta. All these 7, let me get. That's what we pray before we enter a Shiva temple. I think that typically tells you which are the areas which you have to see. The Prakaram, the Balipidiga, the Shikara, the Dwara. So I think that beautifully you explain everything. It is part of our own body, part of the cosmos. Everything is represented in the form of a temple. Lovely. Shivaram, I think I congratulate you for the depth with which you have discussed this. But I still realize, even though you have described in depth, each one requires one big lecture. Each aspect which you have done, each slide requires another big lecture. If it is not possible in marvelous medicine, I would love to do it with you because I'm so much interested and you have inspired the thing what you have inside me, you have kindled a lot more than.
Thank you.
Yeah, that way
that
I
made
think
my day.
It's a great thing. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Over to you, Vidya.
Ravi Shankar?
Oh, sorry. I'll just take off from where Dr. Sridhar left by saying that, my introduction was certainly not hyperbole. So thank you so much, Dr. Shivaram, for really, I was wondering how you were going to put this all together, but you've done an amazing job giving a very, I think what you've done is stimulate the audience to actually look for these things and learn more about that. That's the most important aspect of any talk, which to stimulate more curiosity. And I think you've done that. I just want to shift just a little bit away from the main and religious and divine aspect of the temple to talk about something else, which is basically when you ask historians, how old is this temple? Nobody ever gives you a very definite answer. And that's because, like you mentioned, these are living structures. So the main idol, or the Mulavar as it's called, could be from God knows when, and the Garbhagraham could be from a different era, the Vimanam could be from somewhere else, and the Gopurams could be from somewhere else completely. And in fact, I think it's probably appropriate as a rule of thumb to say that as you walk into a temple, from the outside to the inside, it becomes older and older. Many of the outer prakaras and the gopurams today in many of the South Indian temples are probably thanks to the Vijayanagara architecture. It's very easy to determine that because as you walk into the temple, if you see 2 intertwined creepers on either side of the entrance into the Gopuram, they represent the Ganga and Yamuna, symbolizing a spiritual cleansing as you walk into the temple. That is characteristic of the Vijayanagara Empire. And we cannot really talk too much about the Vijayanagara Empire because they actually were the people who we have to be very thankful for preserving this way of life, architecture, art, etc., because they really stood between the South Indian whatever art or architecture and many of the invasions from the north. So this was very, very important, and it's through them that many of these have survived. And just as an example of how ancient these temples are, I mean, we think that the Virupaksha temple in Hampi we associated with the Vijayanagara rulers, but it has existed from 7th century, long before the Vijayanagara, or even Sage Vidyaranya was even thinking about those. So it's very, very, very difficult to date temples. Now, when you talk about temple history, there are two types of temple history. One is what is etched on the walls, where you showed all those Brahmi scripts and all that stuff, and the other is copper plates. They had copper plates. So when a king gave a grant to a temple, it was documented in a copper plate. Many of these copper plates are now available in museums for
The Kuram copper plates are the most famous.
Correct. Yeah, very, very, very famous. So, and study of these etchings and the copper plates tells you some other things also. They tell you how language has evolved. And not just language, how the script has evolved.
Yes.
So initially, Sanskritam was written in the Grantha script, but over time, that gave way to the Devanagari script. So how did Grantha, the Brahmi script, Tamil was written in the Brahmi script. It has then evolved into into the current Tamil script that we see. So there's so many things that you can get from going to a temple.
Interrupt, for those interested, there are regular classes on how to read the Grantha script as well. So there are regular workshops. For example, I did a 2-month course on how to read Grantha, so I can read Grantha.
Could you put that in the thing in the chat?
Yeah, of course. So there are sorry to interrupt, but there are regular classes on which you can do that.
Yeah, and that's phenomenal.
Also mixed in that Grantha.
Sorry?
Telugu.
Yes.
Grantha is only a script. Telugu, Sanskrit, all these are languages. So Grantha is a script, like Pallava Grantha is a script.
And they used it for all languages.
Yeah. Even South Asian, Southeast Asian, they use Grantha.
And the other thing that I just wanted to say, if people think that Bali Pitham or Bali refers to sacrifice, it's really not. It's an offering. It's where the Naivedyam and all that is offered. It's not the gory thing. So if somebody who hears it for the first time might think that all these temples had sacrifices. No. Bali in its Catholic sense means an offering, and that's what these Bali Pithams are, for offering for the things. So the other thing is that the other thing that I've appreciated when I've looked at the Gopurams and other structures is they not only have like gods and stories from mythology sculpted there, they have very human things, elements sculpted there. I've seen a Gopuram which shows a woman giving birth, in a standing position. And, later on as a medical student, I realized that is one of the positions when people used to use for birthing in the past. So it's just amazing how these people who design these temples have done such fantastic things. The other thing that I wanted to talk about is this interesting story that you harped on about the two Dvajasthambams in the Kapaleshwara temple, one in front of the Murugan Sannidhi and one in the main Sannidhi.
I don't want to go into
might be evidence of that might be evidence that the temple moved, right? That the temple moved from its original structure to another temple, which was already in existence. So it could very well be that. But the other thing is that I wanted to talk about is, and again, you mentioned it very briefly, is that all the shrines need not have been constructed at the same time. So if you read the Pumpavai Patikam of Samandar, he never mentions Karpagambike. He only talks about Kapaleshwara. So it makes you wonder whether at that time there was no Karpagambike Sannidhi. Today, Mylapore is synonymous with Karpagambike. So you imagine how that Sannidhi, once it came into place, took over the whole story, if you will. So these are all the interesting and exciting nuances that make temple visits more than just a unidimensional religious visit, for me. And of course, the other thing, as an appreciator of dance and music, it's this whole margam, which is structured entirely upon the the structure of a temple. So those things could certainly be you can see how they're all interconnected.
Dr.
Thanks,
Sridhar,
Ravi.
you were going to say something, sir.
Just only I wanted to ask one question. I
Yes, sir.
find from Dwaraka to Orissa, if you draw a line,
Hmm.
I find those temples are a mixture of both North Indian and South Indian.
Oh, yeah.
That's true.
Of course. Of course. Even without that line, there is a constant evolution of temple architecture. For example, a lot of people were taken from one part of the country to another and then built something similar. You'll find Badami, for example, have a lot of similarities to Pallava architecture. And a lot of people from there came here and replicated some of the Vatapi or the Badami elements. So your observation is quite right. A lot of North Indian, West Indian, and some Western India, so not West Indian, Western India, there is a lot of overlap and there is a lot of conscious, I think, borrowing of elements.
Okay, thank you.
If anyone has any questions or comments, please raise your hand or type them in the chat box. Dr. Shivaram and Dr. Sridhar would be quite happy to answer. I see Dr. Vijay Bose is logged in. Dr. Vijay Bose, did you want to say something?
Unmute yourself, Vijay.
Yeah, no, I didn't want to say anything. Very nice, Shivaram. Really enjoyed it. Thanks, Dr. Sridhar, as well. Absolutely enjoyed it, Shivaram.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's just I wanted to say. Thanks very much.
Patta, you've been very quiet.
He normally likes to have the last word, so. So,
Can I say something?
absolutely.
So there is in Warangal, there's a UNESCO Heritage Site temple, which is declared as such by about a year or two back, and it's called a Ramappa temple.
Yeah.
The strange thing about the temple is Ramappa is not the deity; it is the architect who was supposed to have come from Karnataka and built for the Kakatiya kings. So probably this is one of the only main temples where the temple is called by the architect. Like that, there's a 1,000-pillar temple in Warangal city also.
Yeah.
So I wish to hear one more talk on Andhra Telangana temples and also Kerala. Yeah.
Dr. Shivaram, lots of homework for you.
Vidya,
Shiva Pillai,
this took a lot of work. This is a lot of work.
Yeah. And we'll wait 6 months, no problem. So, Shiva Pillai.
Talking of UNESCO, one second, Vidya. Talking of UNESCO, last the Hoysala group of temples, Belur, Halibut, and Somnathpura, were declared as UNESCO sites last year.
And this Ramappa architecture, especially that when your wife tried to pass the hand in between that, there are some structures. No, you can also pass a small thread also in some of this Ramappa temple, and some of the figurines are similar to the Belur Halibut things.
Yes.
And the architect also is from Karnataka. So I was just wondering
because what happened to the Western Chalukyas when they went across the Deccan? They did conquer. They built a whole lot of temples all along. In fact, they're known as the Kalyani Chalukyas or the Eastern Chalukyas, and a whole lot of temples would have a lot of resemblances. That's not surprising. That's very much historical, really.
Okay.
The Kalyani Chalukyas will have a lot of such elements.
So, Mr. Raj Ramalingam, would you like to come in now?
No, nothing. Thank you. I had a really wonderful, I enjoyed it thoroughly.
Everyone is.
Raj and I have a lot of discussions about this anyway.
Yeah.
That's why I thought he might want to say something, but he's
No.
so. Mr. Tirumurthy, would you like to say something?
No, nothing. I frankly have benefited so much from this interaction as well as the presentation. I just wanted to thank not only Shivaram, but also the organizers. So thank you very much.
Thanks, Thiru.
Thank you.
So there is a question of which is the temple shown in the talk where scenes from Ramayana were carved?
Somnathpura. One of my favorite. I've actually done a 1 hour talk on the Somnathapura temple itself last year in the PhD's annual seminar. So it's the Somnathapura temple.
Was it the same thing that was in the background of your slides, or was that another temple?
One part of it, yes.
So I'm just trying to look through the chat box to see if there are any other questions. Somebody had asked for the references, so I know it was on your slide. If you could just copy paste the slide or type that on the chat box, that would be great.
I will do that. Anyway, this talk is available on the playlist, so people can actually look at it, and it is there on the references.
Yeah. Somebody specifically mentioned now that you have kindled their interest, they'd like to go back and read. So they wanted the reference for reading. That was the point.
They're talking about, somebody asked question about modern temples like Akshardham. I have only 2 words, no comment.
Nothing compares.
Yeah, maybe after 2000 years, somebody will compare digital art to that and say, oh, you know what, they did such great things physically. We do everything virtually.
Just one thing, remember what these people were working.
Lifespan was also less. There was no,
And the light. If you go to Ellora, these guys are working during the daytime in a very mountainous, treacherous, uninhabited, inaccessible place, and they carved some of the most wonderful sculptures, Buddhist, Jain, Hindu. I have not touched much on Buddhist and Hindu and Jain and so on. That's a different topic altogether. I deliberately did not want to put too many things. But during a period when they'll have sunlight only between 10 o'clock to 3 o'clock, and inside is totally dark, and they've done some fantastic amount of work. So one really doesn't want to compare about the modern temples.
Correct. I spent 3 days in Kailash Nadar, but that's nothing.
Yeah, I spent a week.
Somebody, they don't have their name here. I'm sure Dr. Shivaram can understand it. I don't know anything about this topic. So Vimana over sanctum and Gopuram on entrance and outer walls. But in Brihadishwara temple and Gangaikonda, Cholapuram, it's same.
See, technically Vimana is the one over the gate.
Right.
Gopuram is the one on the wall, entrance just above the entrance. As simple as.
Yes.
In north, for example, the Vimanas may be actually taller than the Gopuram itself. So that can vary. But that is the fundamental thing, that the one over the deity is the Vimana. That is why you have Vimana Darshanam. You go inside Tirupati, they'll show you one specific place where you go and see, and it's all covered in gold, etc.
And Shikara is there on top.
Shikara is the head, just below the stupi, finial. And the Shikara shape will vary. It could be octagonal, square, round, Vesara type, Dravida type, Nagara type, whatever.
And so can the Garbhagriham's shape, right? It can be Gajaprishta, it can be rectangular, it can be whatever, right?
Interesting you should say this. I was going to go into that. It is actually not the shape of the sanctum, but in say Vaishnava temple with the Narayana in the Kidanda Perumal, you see Nindal Perumal, Vitrinda Perumal, Kidanda Perumal. Kidanda Perumal, there's going to be a long kind of thing. So the top of the Shikara of the Vimana is likely to be wagon shaped. So if you have that kind of a Perumal, it's going to be wagon shaped. But there's no exact correlation, except that you can sort of guess. You can't always guess, but you can sort of guess in some places.
Right.
Sorry, Raj sir, you were going to say something.
No, Doctor. Shivaram is having a huge collection of images. He could put only few of them today. He's having a really lot of stories like dice and many things he's having. But we should have another session sometimes later. That's what I
absolutely. I mean, we just thought we will, do this topic, and the amount of, it's one of the most, biggest audiences we have had in recent times, though like Dr. Shivaram said, the Beyond Medicine usually gets more audience than the regular Marvelous Medicine sessions. But and not only that, people have stayed right up to the end and asking so many questions and all that. So definitely there is a lot of interest, and so I will be in touch with Dr. Shivaram to decide exactly what we should do next time, and I'll take inputs from the rest of you because I mean I don't know anything at all on this. So if no one else wants to say or
So Vidya, one thing, we can have probably a series of my suggestions, 9 talks, and call this as part 1.
Sure thing, sure thing. Yeah, we'll do more and more. That's for sure. How frequent, we'll take a call on that. Yeah. So Radhakrishna, looks like your turn's coming early today because there are a lot of people are pretty vocal on the chat box, but nobody's particularly keen to talk. So there you go.
Yeah, I should say, Vidya, this is one of those magical talks. One, even before the talk started, is a triple figure audience, and till the talk ended, is the same number. Usually, somewhere at half an hour, 45 minutes, we see numbers fizzling down. As Vidya rightly said, this is one of the largest audiences. But then again, actually, I was expecting Shivaram to talk about the Hoysala temples, which I heard on YouTube, but then this is a completely refreshing and just the basic to the beginners. And just as Dr. Sridhar said, it's the tip of the iceberg only you touched, and there's so much, much more to actually the sad thing, we Vidya, myself, and a couple of others, we during COVID times we ventured into studying temples little more in detail, and I also engaged the day with Raj Ramlingam, and who talked about a couple of other things, and where we found that many of his temples are dilapidated. The smaller temples are uncared for, broken down, and there's no one even to light a lamp in the temple. That's a sad thing. And more importantly, what we realized is that the younger generation is not interested in temples at all. They are not aware, and they don't know that there's so much history, so much philosophy can be learned from this. And we have shot, videographed, and droned about 30 to 40 temples, Shiva temples along the banks of Kuvam River. And we understand there are 100 more, and we have canned all that footage and just waiting for something like this to happen to bring the whole thing to life. I discussed with Raj for a long, long time. I said, I'm just looking for scholars, one who are good in Agama Shastra, the ones who are good in, say, Chola history, one who good in Saiva Siddhantam, and we should have some sort of a Netflix type series. Since Dr. Sridhar is, actually, my home is the right place to have meetings, sir. I assure you, I'll provide you with coconut rice and puliyodare in the morning. And actually, Shivaram's, that is a route where Shivaram does his cycling. I don't know whether he still does in the mornings. But if Raj, we all join together, and I have a very good audiovisual team who can put everything into perspective. And maybe next week, sometime when Dr. Sridhar gives us time and Shivaram also pitches in, we all should sit together and do. Actually, as actually, this meeting has the maximum number of congratulations and likes and adoration. I have not seen any other medical meetings to this level. Actually, I don't know where Shivaram was watching the screen.
Yes, but I am. I told you one thing, if you remember, 3 days back at Sunday. I said, I don't know much about the talk, but I'll promise you one thing. Nobody is going to leave halfway. I told you that. Remember that?
Yes.
Yeah. Yes.
I was about to say
I was
that.
there.
Yes.
I promise that much. I said I promise you that much, and I'm glad
Sridhar sir, if you are kind enough to initiate this movement of doing something together, I think
Raj and Shivaram can join,
and we can have a few more people, and I think because we can't do the entire series on marvelous medicine, and Vidya will be very hard pressed for time. But then I think there's so much interest. Of course, Ravi Shankar will be obviously part of the system.
Yes,
Ravi.
Bani, did you want to say something? Your camera's on. You need to unmute yourself.
Unmute.
You need to unmute yourself.
A very interesting talk. The slides were beautiful. And so I want to suggest, I thought I got it right, that Dr. Sridhar was from KMC Manipal.
Yeah, correct.
So we live in the temple town of Udupi near Manipal Lake since last 40 years. So please come with the speaker, Patta, Vidya. So the speaker will take us all around and I'll take you all around and at least I'll learn about temples. It's invite from, we have full Sringeri is nearby, Kollur is nearby, and I'm surrounded by temples, but I know nothing about temples, though my husband likes to go. So I think I will oblige him by going. But please come if you can.
We can make a subgroup. Yeah. Okay. That's nice.
Yeah.
Tony.
So thank you, Dr. Shivaram. I know you must have spent a lot of time getting all these slides together, and you took us through it like as if you are taking us through for equivalent of first MBBS through the basic science and then the clinical thing, and then eventually how to enjoy medicine. So next time, maybe when we do beyond, Marvelous Medicine on Wheels, we hope that we can take you with us to inspire the really young folks as well. And
Sure.
next, sorry.
Sure.
Yeah. So any closing comments, please?
From me?
Yes.
Yeah. Thank you for allowing me. So as I said, I do take people now and then, small groups of people now and then to some places. Perhaps we should start off with the Pallava thing and see in Mahabalipuram. It's like this. I've taken people on 3 hours tour and seen only 3 pieces. And there's so much to talk about. I showed each of them very quickly. For example, my mentor guide, Dr. Professor Swaminathan would sit in front of the Mahishasramardhini thing and talk about it for an hour and a half. You can go into the Adivaraha thing and talk about it for 2 hours. So it is possible. Arjuna, you can sit in front of Arjuna's penance or Bhagirath's penance, whatever you want to call it, and be there for about 2-3 hours. So there's so much to talk about, so much to know, so much to discuss. It all depends on your time and your inclination, your effort, your interest, and so on and so forth. Yeah, we'll do small. Perhaps what we should do is to have small excursions arranged for it, small groups. Thank you.
Shivaram,
Anyway.
I know who
Thanks
I'm
for putting us
contacting
together.
before my next trip to India.
Well, I'm just on about to leave for Badami Aihole on a 1-week trip on a curated tour next week. So you'll hear a lot about the Western Chalukyas later.
Color me green.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Your closing comments, Dr. Sridhar.
No, I think it's a wonderful experience. I don't think I get words to tell now. I would love to experience it with Shivaram one of these days.
My pleasure.
We'll have a long queue for that. So thanks, Ravi, for taking time off from work. I know it's morning for you there, and I knew you'd be terribly excited about this topic. So I thought if I make you the moderator, you won't feel guilty about skipping work. So thanks for coming. We won't be having a Marvelous Medicine session next Thursday because it's Diwali. So we'll meet again in the first week of November with some more interesting topics and one episode of Beyond Medicine every month. So thank you one and all for joining in, and good night.